Long before she graced the silver screen under a glamorous Hollywood moniker, a young girl named Ruby Catherine Stevens navigated the harsh, unforgiving streets of Brooklyn. Born into a working-class family in 1907, her childhood shattered piece by piece when she lost her mother at just 4 years old and was quickly left behind by her grieving father. Thrown into a disjointed world of crowded tenements, shifting foster homes, and older siblings struggling desperately to stay afloat, Ruby learned an early, bitter lesson. Survival required armor. She did not have the luxury of a traditional childhood, a safe home, or formal education. Instead, she found herself scrubbing floors, running errands, and taking on odd jobs before she was even a teenager. Yet, beneath the quiet pain of abandonment and relentless poverty, a fierce and resolute ambition burned brightly. She observed the bustling world around her with sharp eyes, understanding that if she wanted to rise above her circumstances, she would have to rely entirely on her own strength. By the age of 15, she took a bold step into the glittering, high-stakes underworld of New York City's Prohibition-era speakeasies and Broadway chorus lines. Dancing past midnight just to earn enough coins to keep a roof over her head, she entered a world far too old for her years. It was a grueling, exhausting existence that forged a deeply guarded private self. She learned how to smile for the audience while her feet ached, separating the vulnerable orphan from the dazzling performer taking shape in the spotlight. She mastered the art of hiding her scars behind a mask of unbreakable composure, laying the groundwork for a lifelong habit of total self-reliance. Every night on stage taught her how to command attention, yet every morning in her lonely room reminded her of how fragile her safety truly was. She became an expert at reading people, anticipating danger, and keeping her true feelings locked away where no one could ever reach them or hurt her again. As she transitioned from a chorus line dancer to an aspiring dramatic actress, this carefully constructed wall grew thicker. The public persona she crafted began to diverge drastically from the deeply hidden reality of her private world. She was transforming into someone who looked like she could conquer anything. But inside, the ghost of the little girl from Brooklyn still wondered if the floor would drop out from under her at any moment. But as the chorus girl transitioned from stage dancer to acclaimed dramatic actress, the public persona she crafted began to diverge drastically from the deeply hidden reality of her private world, secretly raising questions about what she was truly running from, and how long her fragile armor could hold against the pressures of a changing life. As Hollywood beckoned and the newly christened Barbara Stanwyck skyrocketed to cinematic royalty, a profound psychological paradox took root in her life. On screen, she embodied fierce independence, portraying complex women who commanded every room they entered with unwavering confidence and sharp wit. Off-screen, however, she lived a life characterized by intense, emotional compartmentalization. Her marriage to Broadway star Frank Fay thrust her into a turbulent, high-pressure dynamic where she quietly carried the weight of her partner's career struggles, public scrutiny, and personal demons while simultaneously maintaining her own meteoric rise in the movie industry. Rather than leaning on her immense fame or her growing circle of influential peers for comfort, Stanwyck retreated inward. She used her work as an impenetrable shield against intimacy and vulnerability, pouring every ounce of her energy into the craft of acting. Directors on movie sets marveled at her work ethic, noting that she seemed to live solely for her roles. She channeled every bit of her unresolved childhood trauma, her fears of abandonment, and her hidden pain directly into characters who suffered, fought, and triumphed against the odds. Yet, the sharper her professional edge became, the wider the chasm grew between the adored Hollywood icon and the lonely, hypervigilant woman hiding behind closed doors. She maintained an ironclad boundary, refusing to let studio executives, adoring fans, or even her closest friends peek beneath the immaculate, polished surface she presented to the world. To the outside observer, she was a woman who had it all: beauty, talent, wealth, and undeniable power. But behind the closed doors of her home, her life was governed by a strict, almost military discipline that left no room for mistakes, softness, or emotional exposure. She believed that if anyone ever saw the real, hurting person underneath, everything she had built would instantly crumble. This lifestyle created a strange and profound loneliness. She was surrounded by thousands of people every day, directors, costumers, fellow actors, and crew members. Yet she remained completely isolated. What was meant to be a protective barrier against the overwhelming pressures of fame slowly transformed into an emotional fortress, cutting her off from the very human connections she secretly craved. What was meant to be a protective barrier against the pressures of fame slowly transformed into an isolating fortress, setting the stage for a shocking personal secret that she would guard fiercely for decades as her world grew even more complicated. The consequences of maintaining this dual existence manifested not in public scandal or wild outbursts, but in an unyielding emotional fortification that defined the middle years of her career. While navigating a second high-profile marriage to actor Robert Taylor, a union heavily scrutinized by a press corps obsessed with Hollywood romances, Stanwyck perfected the art of emotional self-containment. She gave breathtaking, unforgettable performances in timeless cinematic classics like Double Indemnity and Stella Dallas, channeling the raw, unfiltered pain of her past into characters who navigated profound sacrifice, heartbreak, and moral ambiguity. Audiences wept for the women she portrayed, seeing them as symbols of tragic maternal love and fierce determination. Yet behind the scenes, her life was defined by strict routines, profound privacy, and an almost militant refusal to let anyone see her weaken or lose control. She lived like an outsider, even among Hollywood's elite. While other stars enjoyed the party scene, socialized at exclusive clubs, or courted gossip columnists, Stanwyck kept to herself, earning a sterling reputation as the hardest-working, most professional actress in the entire business. She arrived on set early, knew every line to perfection, and treated every crew member with respect, but she never let anyone past her carefully guarded emotional perimeter. Her colleagues saw a titan of cinema. Few ever witnessed the quiet, solitary moments where the armor felt heaviest. This careful divide allowed her to survive the brutal transitions, shifting studio politics, and aging standards of a decades-long career, but it required an extraordinary psychological toll. She had successfully convinced the world that she was invincible, completely masking the heavy, quiet cost of a lifetime spent standing entirely alone. She carried her burdens in absolute silence, believing that asking for help was a sign of weakness that she simply could not afford. As the years marched on, the gap between her public adoration and her private solitude widened even further, creating a life split neatly in two. How long can a person carry the weight of an entire identity built on survival before the cracks finally begin to show, revealing the fragile truth underneath and changing everything the world thought it knew? Barbara Stanwyck's ultimate legacy is not merely found in the 80-plus films she left behind, the countless stars she inspired, or the honorary Academy Award that punctuated her twilight years. Instead, her true legacy lies in the absolute mastery of her own narrative. She lived a double life not out of malice or deceit, but out of absolute necessity, safeguarding the fragile, abandoned child of Brooklyn beneath the impenetrable, shining armor of a cinematic legend. By refusing to let the public narrative define her vulnerabilities, her heartbreaks, or her origins, she retained total ownership of her life story until her very final days. When she passed away quietly in 1990, she left behind no tell-all memoirs, no bitter public complaints, and no sensational confessions. Instead, she chose to let her monumental body of work and her fiercely guarded privacy speak entirely for themselves. Her remarkable journey reveals a profound psychological truth about the nature of fame, survival, and human endurance. Sometimes, the greatest performance happens entirely off-screen, where a person quietly rebuilds themselves from the ground up, learns to stand completely on their own terms, and never asks the world for pity. She proved that strength does not always come from shouting from the rooftops, but often from enduring life's harshest storms in absolute, dignified silence. As we look back at her incredible life, we are reminded that behind every famous face lies a complex, hidden world of private battles fought out of sight. As the curtain falls on a life defined by such fierce, quiet resilience, it leaves behind a lingering question. When the cameras stop rolling and the applause finally fades, what parts of ourselves do we protect the most? And what would the world find if it looked just beneath the surface?